Freddy Bear here. Two things I wanted to talk about real quick: radiation and delta V. First off, radiation. You've got two. As far as space travel is concerned, you got two types that you got to worry about. You got to worry about your particle radiation and your EM radiation. And the particle radiation is the really dangerous stuff. That's the charged particles that get trapped inside the Van Allen belt. So once you travel outside of the Van Allen belt, you are on your own as far as particle radiation goes. So you've got, alpha, beta, and gamma particle radiation, and alpha radiation, which is the most damaging to organic material, you can actually stop with a piece of paper. Beta has a little bit more ability to penetrate, but aluminum skin on an aircraft will block most of the beta radiation. It's the gamma that's the stuff that you need the feet of lead shielding in order to stop. However, the important thing is that the radiation given off by the sun is not constant. It fluctuates. And Owen had even mentioned in his video about not being able to really predict sunspots, which made me think of a fairly apt analogy between space travel and crossing the Atlantic Ocean. So, we can't really predict solar weather very well. So once you're outside that Van Allen belt, you're pretty much on your own. And so the equivalent would be, imagine if every time you went to cross the Atlantic Ocean, every time there was a little choppy seas, everybody on board the ship just quadrupled their lifetime risk of dying from cancer. And if you hit a real storm, everybody's just dead. Just dead. There's, everybody on that ship is dead because you hit a storm and just massacred. Nothing left. So if that were the case, then people would certainly be a lot less anxious to go sailing across the Atlantic Ocean if, a little bit of choppy weather was likely to significantly reduce, your lifespan, and a storm would just kill everybody. So I think that's kind of an appropriate analogy for the radiation situation. That, it can be done. You just have to, pray for calm seas the whole way across. So if you're going to go and you get calm seas, everybody's going to be more or less fine. But if you hit any of those chops, it's going to get real dicey real quick. So that was point one. Point two, delta V. So normally with technology, you benefit from Moore's law. That's why computers and stuff keep getting progressively cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And so to build, all of the navigational systems you would need to fly to the moon, totally easy to do. The problem is not building the computers and the guidance and navigation systems and everything. It's fueling the rockets, because you can't not pay the delta V to get to the moon. If you want to go to the moon, you need the delta V to move all of the mass you want to take with you there and back, and that's a lot of delta V. So you can make things more efficient, but you can't change the amount of delta V required to go to the moon. That's just, it is what it is. And a somewhat apt analogy would be supersonic air travel. Nobody's really doing it because there are certain technical challenges that you can't really work your way around. You just have to accept them. And if you're willing to pay for it, you can have a supersonic airliner. The problem is there's just not enough demand for something that expensive. And so, the problem is not that we can't afford to build a rocket. It's that the expense does not benefit from the sort of efficiency that you see in the tech sector with computers. Because in computers you got Moore's law, so you get, cheaper and cheaper, faster and faster. But if you look at, say, automobiles and fuel efficiency, I mean, you see changes over time, but for the most part, like, once you hit a certain level of efficiency, you're just not going to get it down any further. And so if you had to, buy billions of dollars worth of gasoline to drive across the country, there wouldn't be a whole lot of people driving across the country. That's not to say no one could. Anyone willing to spend the money on that could. And, like, you can certainly make the argument that, we should be able to pay that because we deal in fiat currency. It's just worthless paper, and we could do whatever we want with it. Why we don't, there's an argument to be made there. But as far as why it isn't cheaper today than it was, 50 years ago, is because of delta V. Like, delta V is a hard limit. You have to pay the delta V to get to the moon. So to build, your rocket ships and fill them up with, cryogenic fuel, which is not cheap. There's limits to what you can do to reduce those costs. And I think we've already pretty much maxed out the efficiency as far as cost for the fuel itself. I doubt, I'm certain that liquid oxygen and the kerosene mixture that, for example, the first stage of the Saturn V used, that it's cheaper today than it was in the 60s, for sure. But, like, the massive quantities required to get to the moon is still the same. So even though the fuel itself is cheaper, the total cost to get there and back is not orders of magnitude less. So why we don't just pay the price and do it, you have an argument to be made there. But as far as, why it's expensive, it's you have to pay for delta V. And so I just wanted to kind of touch on those two things, because those seem to be two of the big points that Owen brought up tonight that I sort of, had an explanation for. Whether or not it's a convincing explanation, it is an exercise for the student. But I just wanted to make a quick little video. I knew if I didn't sit down and do it right away, I'd never end up doing it. And so here it is. And obviously I'm doing this totally off the top of my head, because I'm not sitting in front of my computer. But any questions or criticisms can go in the comments down below. Feel free to, verbally eviscerate me. I promise you won't hurt my feelings. So this is Freddy Bear, signing off.